it's Ben and or Bookish Bear here. It's Ben and or Bookish Bear here, and I'm going to do my first review video, which is exciting, I guess, for me only. I'm just finished Infinite Jest. I actually finished it Sunday around 2 a.m. in the morning, evening, whatever you call that. I'm a night owl, so I refer to it as night. So finished it on Sunday, kind of sat with it for a little bit, kind of wanted to talk about it immediately as well. Decided to give myself some time to just kind of let it sink in and not just go with my gut reaction to the ending and how I felt about it after reading 1,000 pages plus, and just kind of, get a better sense of how I actually felt about it by giving myself some time. So Infinite Jest is by David Foster Wallace. Most people probably know about this book and its existence. First of all, I feel like I should say that this might be a little bit spoilerish. So I'm going to just talk as if you've read the book. If you haven't read the book, I'm not going to give away too much. I'm not going to give away anything super spoilery that will ruin the experience, but I'm also going to talk about things that happen in the book and stuff like that. So if you don't want to be spoiled at all, you probably shouldn't watch the rest of this video, and I'll see you in my next video. But if you don't mind that, or if you just want to hear people talk about Infinite Jest, that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to hold it up the whole time because it's so heavy. The first thing I want to say about this book is I think it's sort of gotten this wrong reputation as this big, difficult book that you should be intimidated by, and you need to do all these things and do all these preparations and read all this stuff to get to Infinite Jest or to understand Infinite Jest. And it's this really difficult thing and this difficult task. And that's how I felt about it. That's what I thought about it. I thought, okay, this is a book that I'm not smart enough for, and I'm not a stupid person. That's just kind of the misconception that I think the book gets. And after reading it, and even while reading it, I begin to understand that that's not really true. That's not what this book is. If you're planning to read Infinite Jest, I would say put in some of the legwork, read about, I think I went to something called Infinite Summer, which was like a read-along thing for people to read it in the summer, and they had some tips and stuff. I think that that's good, because most of the tips are going to be like, it's not that big of a deal, just read the book, which is the best tip that I think anyone can give. Like, it's not a big deal, just read the book, because it's not all of those things. So, are there big words in Infinite Jest that you probably won't know the meaning of, or that you've never seen before? Sure. But you can look those up, or there's going to be a footnote to it in the back that will tell you what it means, or whatever. But honestly, I think personally, if you're not reading books regularly where there are words in it that you don't know or that you need to look up, then you probably need to expand your reading a little bit. I don't think that that's something we should be scared of as readers. Words you don't know, learn new words, or look them up. Keep a dictionary with you. If you think that that's necessary for Infinite Jest, it might be, it might not be. Also, Infinite Jest works just like every other book, in that if you don't know the meaning of a word, the context clues are going to tell you what that word means, at least vaguely. And if still that doesn't help, just look it up. I just don't feel like it's beyond someone's understanding. If you are reading or educated at all, I just don't think that it's too smart for you. It's probably not too smart for you, which is a misconception that the book has. It is very long. Let's see, so this copy, and I believe all the copies, as far as I could tell by stuff that I read about it and stuff, all of the copies seem to be similar in page which is really odd and interesting for me. All the pages seem to be the same, so the same stuff happens on the same page in different variations or different covers of the book, which is interesting to me because that's usually pretty different. But I guess with the footnotes and stuff, he wanted it. I don't know. It's not important. But so this one's 1,079 pages, including footnotes. Do you need to read the footnotes is something that comes up, I think, a lot when people are preparing to read the book. Yes, you need to read the footnotes, but it's not always a difficult and daunting task to read the footnotes. Sometimes it is, and you can skip them and go back to them later. So yes, footnotes. It's really long. Sorry. What I'm trying to say is it is really long. It's 1,079 pages, at least this copy is. That's a lot of pages to read. About 981 of the pages are the story, the rest are footnotes. So it is really long. So in that sense, it is difficult if you're not used to reading long books. If you don't like to read long books, then it's going to be kind of a task. But what's in the book, the content, is not necessarily difficult. Some of it is very kind of dry and boring, yes. But you get through that, and you get to parts that you really enjoy. So the last thing is, I don't think people understand how goofy Infinite Jest is. Like, there's stuff in here that made me literally just cringe and roll my eyes at how goofy and dumb it is. Like, there's a character who crab walks, and then he doesn't say why he crab walks until he does, and then he says, like, this character tried to he was drunk or intoxicated or something, and tried to limbo under a desk or a chair or something, and then messed up his back, so now he has to crab walk. Like that, stuff like that, where it's just like, what? It reminded me mostly of Kurt Vonnegut's work. So the kind of just goofy, out there, silly, to make a point style of Vonnegut is so similar to the stuff that happens in Infinite Jest. As far as the other content, there's lots of stuff in here that is shocking and kind of offensive, probably. He uses the N-word. He says fag a lot. There are scenes of, like, sex. There's a specific scene about gay sex that is kind of awful. So there's lots of stuff in here that might be upsetting for people. There's violence towards animals. There's a particular character who does lots of really awful stuff. So I would say, if there are things that are going to trigger you or that you're worried about might be too offensive, ask someone who's read it, and they can kind of tell you how extreme those things are, because there's lots of stuff in here. I know some people who've said, like, trigger warning for literally everything that could trigger you is in Infinite Jest, and that's sort of true, I think. I tend to not be really offended by stuff in books, so I'm probably not a great gauge or person to ask, but I can tell you what happens in the book. Nothing really in the book offended me or upset me past the initial, like, oh, that's awful, or oh, I really hate this character because of the things he's doing. But I'm more easily able to detach from media and works of art than some people might be. To summarize what I just said, basically, I think the three things that really intimidate people about this book is that they think it's too smart for them, it's really long, and maybe it's pretty boring. And those three things combined are very intimidating. I agree. And that's how I went into the book, thinking, like, this is what it's going to be. It's going to be really hard. It's going to be really dense to get through. And in times that is true. But for the most part, it's not. And I don't think that you should be intimidated if you're planning to read it. I don't think people should shy away from this book because for those reasons, because the book is going to help you with all that stuff in various ways. And I feel like David Foster Wallace had to be aware of all of those three stigmas and how they might be attached to the book, because like I said, the book helps you with that stuff, and that sort of, I understand that sounds like an abstract thing that doesn't make a lot of sense, but if you dive in, it will make sense. So, as far as the plot goes, there's a lot going on in Infinite Jest. There's a lot of strings that seem to be left hanging. There's a lot of characters that you're not sure, like, who is this person and how they play in. It basically is about this group of people at a halfway house for people in recovery. So a lot of addicts, a lot of AA talk, and those characters, which for the majority, I really enjoyed most of those characters. The other group is the kids at the ETA, which is this tennis school, and it's about, and so like what's going on there at the tennis school, and mostly about this family, the main family in the book, and their father started the school, and he made films, and he apparently made this film that is so entertaining that if you watch it, you don't want to do anything else, and you eventually die because you stop having the will to do anything else, and people just sit in front of this, what they call the entertainment, or its title is Infinite Jest 4 or 5, which the book takes the title from. And so they watch it until they die, basically. So it's not really the American government. It's sort of, I guess it is the American government. In the book, it's set in the future, I suppose. And Canada, America, and Mexico are sort of all in one union together. The American side, they're trying to find the entertainment before this group of assassins from Canada finds it, because this group of assassins wants to find it and just sort of show it and kill everybody in America, and want to kill everyone in America. So there's that plot going on as well, which is sort of the most interesting aspect of the novel as far as plot goes, is this idea of these people want to find this entertainment before it kills everybody. So that's basically, I suppose, a pretty good summary of the plot. Like I said, it's really long, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So to get into the plot of what's happening and how it works, and what all is going on would take forever. So I'm not going to do that. Also, what it's about, in a bigger sense, italicized about, the themes that it really deals with mostly are entertainment, how it affects us, what we view as entertainment, how we view entertainment culturally and personally, and then addiction. Addiction is a really big theme in the book. I would say the biggest theme, and what I took away most from it, is his ideas, or the characters, the stuff about addiction, and basically how, I mean, if you wanted to go through every character, you could probably say, oh, all of these characters are addicted to something, and this is what it is, and this is how it affects their lives. Most prominently and most obviously, that is to do with the people who are addicted to substances like alcohol or drugs. Just because I feel like when we say addiction, culturally, that's what we go to immediately. We don't tend to think of other things as addictions as much as just things people enjoy. But this book sort of dives into, is that true? How does that work? Where does that point end, where we are too addicted to something? So there are definitely lots of interesting things to say about addiction in the book, and I believe that David Foster Wallace had some drug and alcohol problems. So it's just all of that stuff about addiction in regards to substances, drugs, alcohol, is very raw and very real, and just seems very authentic. Bigger things about entertainment and how we consume it, and this idea that something could be so entertaining that we don't want to do anything else. Really interesting. The two biggest themes I think that the book talks about is entertainment and addiction. So if you're not interested in the way those things sort of fit into our lives as people and humans, then it might not interest you to read this book. So overall, I'm not going to do any kind of rating system like stars or whatever like that. I don't think with reviews, I think I'm just going to talk about the books. Overall, I really enjoyed the book. I feel really conflicted about my feelings towards the book after reading it and after the ending. So this might be a little spoilery. So if you don't want to be spoiled at all, you should definitely not finish the video. But or if you're in the middle of reading Infinite Jest and you don't want to know about the ending or how that might affect the rest of the story, that's fine. You should stop watching. So I was all in the book as far as my enjoyment went. Like, I was really enjoying it. There were parts of it that I sort of didn't enjoy reading and had to slog through. But there were definitely parts of the book where I felt very confused about David Foster Wallace's intention. So my biggest struggle with the book is going between this idea of the way the book works and being really frustrated with that, and just the frustration of like, but why are you doing this? Like, what is the intention of doing this? What's the intention of having this really compelling situation happening in the main story, but every few paragraphs you're making me flip to the back to read some really boring thing in the endnotes? Like, why are you doing that? Why are some of the endnotes in the endnotes and some of it the same kind of information is in the text? Like, how did you decide what goes where? There are parts where you're reading the main text and you switch to the back and the endnotes are more compelling and interesting, and you don't want to go back to the rest of the text. There are parts where it works really well because you are reading the main text and you feel it's just, there are large parts of the book where it's this, for 6 or 7 pages, just blocks of text, and it feels like you're never going to get through it. It's just blocks and blocks of text, no paragraph breaks, and this will happen for 4 to 5 pages at a time, sometimes up to like 8 pages at a time, and then you get to a footnote and you flip to the back and it's just really tiny text. So the footnotes are even tinier text. So there are parts of the books where you're reading the main text, you go to the endnotes, and it's 3 to 4 pages of tiny text. You read through that, and then you jump back to the main text, and you're like, oh, this is nothing. Like, there are like 0 words on this page, and you feel like you're reading a regular book again. So in that way, it was effective for kind of psyching yourself out to think like, okay, this is not as daunting as it was because you just read the tiniest text on the planet for 3 to 4 pages. And then you flip back to what you thought was a lot of words that seem now to not be a lot of words. So it's effective in that way, for me anyways. But, sorry, I went on a tangent. So it was the frustration of, why are you doing this? What's the intention? It doesn't seem to make sense what you're doing. And then my brain saying, it's his book, he can do whatever he wants. He can write it however he wants. He can do whatever he wants, and you can choose to read it or not. And to allow myself not to be frustrated by that or those ideas. So that struggle came into play in the most obvious way at the end. So the last 20 pages or so of this book were incredibly frustrating. They were just so frustrating. it might have been a little self-inflicted because I wanted to finish the book and wanted to finish the book within that week, and it had gotten to Sunday, and I wasn't finished yet. So I was a little stressed out about that. But I got to the last 20 pages or so and was excited, just the way that you're excited about a long book when you get to the end and you're like, okay, I'm almost finished. And in the last 20, 25 pages or so, stuff happens that is not relevant at all to the plot. It doesn't seem. And again, who am I? I didn't write the book. It's not my book. Who am I to say what's relevant or not? So it's seemingly not relevant. It's stuff that could have been anywhere in the book. Could have been in the beginning, could have been in the middle, could have been anywhere, but instead it's the last 20 pages. And those last 20 pages, you want some kind of resolution. You don't get any resolution in Infinite Jest. There's no resolution. Any of the plots, I don't think of any of the plot. I can't think of any of the plot lines that have like a definite resolution. And then the very last pages are this just weird, trippy thing that's going on. And I guess people can interpret it in different ways. I'm not going to talk a lot about that because I don't want to spoil too much. But it was very frustrating for me and really changed my feelings about the book. The last, like I said, 20 to 30 pages of the book really, really changed my view of the book, and that's why I wanted to sit and wait for a little bit, because I didn't want to say, okay, I didn't enjoy this book just based on that, because the rest of the book I did really enjoy, and I had fun reading for the most part. I usually enjoy books that don't have resolution or are open-ended and you need to make your own conclusions. I enjoy movies, stories that don't have resolution. I tend to enjoy, but this just felt like it had zero resolution, like just none. And it just sort of ends. It just ends. And it just felt really crazy to read 1,079 pages and then it just ends. It just felt so abrupt, and maybe that's the point. I would assume that's the point. But again, it was really frustrating. So I'll probably go back and read the last 20 pages or so again just to see how I feel about it the second time. While reading it, I definitely, like, halfway through, I was like, okay, I'm going to read this book again. There's eventually going to be a point where I read this book again because I'm going to want to. And I know that I'll see, notice, read things that I didn't before. And I don't know if I feel that way now after the ending. One of the things I love about Infinite Jest is it is something you can become obsessed with. It is something that you could very easily fall into, and you could probably only read Infinite Jest for a year and get something new out of it every time. Only read this text and other books about Infinite Jest for probably a whole year and still feel that frustration, I would guess. And it's something you can become totally obsessed with. I tend to really enjoy those kinds of media and art. Things like Lost. There's a series called Morning Glories, a comic series. Stuff where there are lots of theories going on. There's lots of, like, what's going on, questions about plot, questions about intention, all that stuff, and how it's going to come together. I really enjoy stories where questioning and the question of what's going on is part of the story and plot. And Infinite Jest felt that way sometimes, which was really exciting for me. It felt like something that I could very easily become obsessed with and read about it and watch videos about it. After the ending, I felt less that way. And I think the intention was to make people feel more that way. Like, okay, I need answers. I'm going to search them out, kind of thing. And I think I'll get to that point eventually. But for now, I'm just a little frustrated. I'm just a little frustrated with it. And frustrated that David Foster Wallace is no longer with us and I can't ask him about it, or people can't ask him about it. So I'll probably watch a bunch of videos and see what he said about a bunch of it eventually. I think I have another book about Infinite Jest that I'll probably read once I get through some other books that I am excited to read. So overall, I would suggest Infinite Jest. I think it's worth the read. I think it's an experience that will enjoy more than you don't enjoy it, and I think that you will know right away if you enjoy it or not. I think that you're going to get 100 to 200 pages in, and you're going to know if this is a book for you or not. And if it's a book for you, then you're going to keep going and you're going to have a great experience. And if it isn't, you can just put it down and come back to it later or never pick it up again. I would say read Infinite Jest and don't be intimidated by it. So another thing I want to do when I talk about books and reviews, and I'm going to make a separate video about this as well, is I tend to listen to music when I read. With Infinite Jest, I didn't listen to a lot of music because it was so dense and I feel like I needed to just focus on the text and the book. But towards the end, I was listening to some music, and mostly what I listened to was kind of mellow rock stuff that I could kind of ignore. A lot of Grizzly Bear, the Nationals' new album, and there's this band called Hovvdy, which is spelled with 2 V's, Hovvdy, and I believe they're from Austin, Texas. They just put out an album, I think, called Cranberries that I listen to a lot, like on repeat for hours at a time while I read Infinite Jest, because it's just very chill and great background music. So I'm going to put that stuff down there too, so you can check out those bands. But that was music that really fit really well with the book Infinite Jest. Thanks for watching. If you have read Infinite Jest, if you want to talk about Infinite Jest, please comment below or find me on Twitter, A Bookish Bear on Twitter, and I would love to talk about Infinite Jest. I'm, like I said, a little bit obsessed with it, a little bit obsessed with how I feel about it and want to talk about it. So please do that. And thanks for watching.